The liberal media is desperately searching for a Joe Biden replacement, and it looks like Mayor Pete is at the top of the list. The Transportation Secretary, best known for overseeing disaster after disaster during his tenure, is now getting glowing puff pieces from the press. Check out this headline from Wired magazine. Quote, Pete Buttigieg loves God, beer, and his electric Mustang. But wait, it gets even more ridiculous. The article praises old Pete for his, quote, voluminous mind, his cathedral mind, the curious mind of Pete. His cabinet job requires only a modest portion of his cognitive powers. But it gets more ridiculous with these questions. Quote, are there more ways the challenges of transportation speak to your spiritual side? And it looks like the media is praising Mayor Pete because the alternative is much worse. The White House has been trying to elevate Kamala Harris, but then we ended up with this.
First question, let's start with your favorite song of all time.
Oh, my favorite song of all time. I was going to say something from Bootsy, but...
We love that.
I mean, I don't know if your viewers know Funkadelic.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I am 28.
Bob Marley, for sure.
Okay.
There's a range. I have a range, but I'm a hip-hop kid. That's how I grew up.
All right, Jesse, we know the White House is trying to repair Harris's image problem and put her out there more. But what was the goal of having Kamala do this interview with a small-time YouTuber? And wait, it got 3,000 views in 3 days.
Again, we are trying to reintroduce Kamala Harris to the voters. And what they don't understand is it's not about Kamala's personality. It's about her performance. We're not dating Kamala Harris. We don't need to know what her favorite song is, her favorite salad dressing. We just want to know if she can perform, because we're going to hire her if that's what they want. And that's not the kind of question you ask people you're trying to hire. Now, Pete, I read this thing. Can you name a transportation secretary that's got a gushing puff piece like this? The answer is no, because this guy is running for president. Look how many boxes this guy checks for a Democratic nominee. They say he's smart, he's a veteran, he lifts weights, he's in a gay relationship, he plays the piano, yet he also splits wood. He not only likes cheeseburgers, he also likes Impossible Burgers. He loves God, but he really loves blacks, gays, women, and the poor. You can't check this many boxes. It's like a consultant came up with something and just overdid it. I'm a little sick of Pete, to be honest with you, and especially the fact that I know he's got a electric Mustang.
Yep. Yeah.
That's not what I think you need, Pete.
You know, Dana, the author of this Buttigieg piece writes that he loves God, beer, and his electric Mustang. But how about asking about the train derailments, the flight cancellations, the supply chain, his extended paternity leave? None of that comes in.
Yeah, I feel like this reporter at Wired needed an editor to say, go back and try again. But maybe the reporter himself was like this enamored, but they're just the total blind spot that they have. The other thing is you only do a glowing profile or agree to do a profile piece once you've done something of significance. That's another life lesson.
Right.
You don't do it when on the back end of the East Palestine. You wait. Now, the other thing is the media keeps trying to make Pete Buttigieg a thing. The Democratic Party, the voters themselves, the grassroots of the Democratic Party, don't want him as their thing. And the media keeps trying to shove it down their throats that you are going to like him because it checks all of the boxes. And I think that he would be better off just like doing some great work, seeing how the travel season goes this summer, right? Because everybody's going to want to know. That's what people are going to want to know. How are the roads? How are the trains? How are the planes? And that's what's going to matter. I do also wanted to mention that I think I said this on Jesse's show last night. The White House is trying to be very, very sneaky on the Kamala Harris reboot. Because, yes, that YouTube only got 3,000 views, right? But that woman that did the interview, she has 6.5 million likes on TikTok. And that's where they want you to think that they're only just doing YouTube when it's actually a TikTok star that they're going after, while they still try to fight with the Chinese while the president's in Japan at the G7.
You know, Tom, they talk about the fact that the writer says, I slowly became aware of Buttigieg's cabinet job requires only a small, modest portion of his cognitive powers. And it appears now that Buttigieg beats Biden in Democrat voters' pick of 2024, 23-18. What's stopping Pete from actually jumping into the game?
Well, maybe he realizes as well. I agree with Dana. The voters don't like him. It's interesting. The two people we were talking about here was Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris, and they both were set up by the press as being the ultimate candidate. We never heard she's the perfect candidate, but the voters didn't like her either. How about Robert Kennedy Jr., who's polling pretty well against the president? Why doesn't anybody mention him? And you know what? A lot of red state people that I know, they like
him.
RFK Jr.
Yeah.
And about the only thing he has in common with President Trump is that they were both banned from Twitter.
Interesting. Interesting. All right, Harold, what do you think?
So I come from an era when you work for the president, you work for the pleasure of the president, you should behave like that. If I were in the White House, I'd be disappointed that he would have done this and that the kind of attention that he's getting. Number two, I think if I were the Transportation Secretary, I'd be focused on, if I wanted to get out and get some press on my own, I'd want to get out and talk about some of the infrastructure successes and go into cities and states and talk about those things. I'd be in East Palestine trying to figure out what can we do testing to ensure that people's property
But
values
that's what
don't
you
drop.
would do, the fact that he's not.
Well, I can only answer the question how I would answer it. I mean, so I would be doing different things if I were him trying, and if I were in the White House, I'd say, these are the things you need to be doing. Now, he's chosen not to do that. And he's chosen to do this. This is really an era in politics where people think that having social media followers, getting on television, is the only thing you need to do in order to be in politics. It happens on both sides of the aisle. I give DeSantis a little credit. He at least is doing something. I disagree with a lot what he's doing with Disney and education here, but at least he's amassed a record that he's going to get out and campaign on. Tim Scott the same way, Pence the same way. If you want to run for office, have an agenda, have a message, have a vision, have a platform, not a social media platform, but actually something substantive. So if I were in the White House, I'd be disappointed that my transportation secretary was not doing
And as
this.
former Congressman Harold Ford, are you disappointed in him?
I would, if I were the president of the United States, I'd be disappointed in him.
You have an opinion, Harold.
Well, clearly, I would much rather see the transportation secretary talking about those issues, the energy secretary talking about. I mean, this is not to malign Jennifer Granholm, but saying this is not what I would want my transportation secretary.
Disappointment is a strong word for Harold.
Yeah, I guess you went that far. Okay.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.